public question comment cards, which are out on the table, and we'll be taking questions from the public during the course of the presentations. So if you could bring them up to the front and give them to our Vice Chair, Joe Hamilton, that would be appreciated. I also wanted to let you know that this is what we're styling as a public information session, and we're going to be having questions from the Omnibus Committee members and other community board members, but we will have at least one public hearing on the project and hopefully more before July. The process is really just begun as far as this phase of the redesign goes. So I wanted to assure everyone that should you want to comment, and if you have questions, we're going to be providing for that. But given the timeliness of the resubmission, we thought it was a good idea to have this information delivered in a public forum as soon as possible. Without the microphone, though, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Brad Hoylman. I'm the chair of Community Board 2 and the Saint Vincent Omnibus Committee, which I think most of you know was formed with the special purpose of reviewing this plan with the Rudin project in mind, along with the Saint Vincents Hospital relocation. And I wanted to introduce the members of the Saint Vincent Omnibus Committee who are here in the first couple of rows. So if you could start and introduce yourselves. The first person is Joe Hamilton.
Marilyn Dorado. Carol Gordon.
Rich Davis. Trevor Stewart.
Keith Berger.
I'm Albert Bennett. I'm a member of the Landmarks, public member of the Landmarks Committee.
David Gruber. Sorry.
Doris Eva. Landmarks.
Lois Rakoff, Landmarks.
Shirley Secunda.
Gary Tomei, Landmarks.
Community board member.
McCarthy. Landmarks.
Jason Mansfield.
David Rack, Chair of Zoning.
But you're a community board member. Are there any other community board members here?
Jill Heinberg.
Thanks very much. And so just, why don't we just go ahead and start without the microphone. Tonight, as I said, is a public information session. And I think that most people know that in response to the Landmarks Preservation Commission hearing on May 6th, several major developments have occurred, and let's recap those briefly. First, St. Vincent's has decided to apply for a hardship exemption for permission to demolish the O'Toole building, which I think people know the LPC indicated was worthy of preservation, a position in line with Community Board 2. And the hardship exemptions are permissible under Landmarks law in situations where the LPC isn't prepared to permit demolition, but finds that the structure is unusable for the nonprofit entity's charitable purposes. And we have with us tonight, who will be speaking in a minute, the General Counsel of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, who's going to give us a brief overview and describe to us how public input will be entered into the record in connection with that portion of the application. The hardship applications are extremely rare. I'll note that one legal commentator calls them, quote, the lengthiest, most complex, and least frequently used of the processes required by the Landmarks law, end quote. So that is rather, I guess, unreassuring as to what we might expect, but we hope to flesh it out further tonight. And then we're also going to hear from the counsel for St. Vincent's as well, who's going to describe to us how the Landmarks process will proceed in connection with the hardship application. The second big development is that with the support of our elected officials, who I should introduce tonight and have the representatives, the LPC has indicated that 5 of the buildings on the St. Vincent's campus should be preserved: Smith, Raskob, Nurses Residence, and Spellman, and that the height and proposed bulk of the original condominium plans weren't necessarily appropriate for the Greenwich Village Historic District. So the Rudin folks are here tonight to describe how they have revised their plans, and we'll discuss that with us. And we're also going to hear from St. Vincent's about their proposed revisions to their plan. And the third major development, which we're going to hear about tonight too, about an ancillary but important concern, is about one of the issues that was raised at the course of hearings that we've had, not only through the community board's Saint Vincent Omnibus Committee, but also through our Social Services and Education Committee, which is the need for more public schools. And Keen Berger is here from the Social Services and Education Committee, and I believe the folks from Rudin will be prepared to give a few words about the proposed new school that they help facilitate on a pro bono basis at the Foundling Hospital. So that's an important aspect of the overall component that I think we want to understand more. And to kind of lay out the plan for tonight, we're going to be discussing the hardship exemption application until about 8 p.m. And the next hour is going to consist of a presentation by the architects, questions from the Omnibus Committee members and Community Board 2 members. And then, as I said before, throughout the evening, if you have questions, if you could bring them up to the front, and we will ask them as we proceed through the evening. The Landmarks Preservation Commission is going to hold a public meeting on the revised plans on both the Rudin Residential Complex and the Saint Vincent's Hospital plan on Tuesday, June 3rd at 9:30 a.m. at NYU School of Law, Vanderbilt Hall. That's 40 Washington Square South. The Community Board will be sending out additional notices and information about that upcoming meeting. But it's my understanding that public testimony will be taken at that meeting, even though it is a public meeting and not an official public hearing. Community Board 2, as I said earlier, is also working on having at least one public hearing where we will take public testimony on the plans. Is Diane Shekier here? I wanted to acknowledge her. But without further ado, do we have a microphone? They're on the way. They're on the way up. I think I'll just introduce our first speaker, who's Mark Silverman, the General Counsel for the Landmarks Preservation Commission. And Mark is going to describe what it means to file a hardship exemption and how the public role might be taken in terms of moving forward. So, Mark, I just wanted to thank you and the LPC for all of your support thus far with this project. And I think we owe a round of applause for Mark and
I understand that the community board members have questions, so I'm going to do a brief outline and then answer the questions that you all have. But let me just first say that because there's been a lot of discussion about the process here, and the last hardship application was during the late 1980s. There really hasn't been a lot. There's been nothing similar to this sort of scale and importance of the St. Vincent's one. So it'll be a process we're all going to go through together, and to sort of really be clear, this is a public process. It's an application just like a certificate of appropriateness. It solicits and wants the input of people, community boards, residents, and it will be a process where we will consider. There'll be lots of opportunities to testify. On the 3rd, there will be the presentation will be presented to the Landmarks Commissioners for the first time. They have never seen it. This will be their first time hearing it. We will then schedule a subsequent hearing, and by meaning hearing distinction, which I guess has caused some confusion, it is standard operating procedure for the Commission once it has an application to bring it back in subsequent meeting hearings and then opening them up for testimony. And as the Chair T said at the last hearing, this application will be going back to the public process. So it's technically a meeting on the what I call the campus, the east side, but it's also going to be here, but we will open that up for testimony, and it will be a public hearing on this new application for a hardship. There will be, because the Commissioners are seeing it for the first time, you all are seeing it tonight. You're seeing it 2 weeks before the Commissioners. And I should also say, I'm sure the St. Vincent people will explain, whatever they're submitting to the Landmarks Commission should be generally available for your perusal. We have it now. They're at submission at the Commission. We are making copies. It will be available for people who want to come and pick it up. So if you feel free to come and look at it and study it.
Available where exactly?
I'm sorry?
Where will it be available?
Well, it's certainly available at our offices, the Landmarks Commission, which is the municipal building, 9th floor north. I'm sorry? Are all the materials on the website? Okay, so all the materials are on Saint Vincent's website, which is even more convenient for everybody. Okay? But if you did want to come down to our offices, you could get a copy there. So sometime in July, early-ish July, not running into the holiday, we will have another public meeting hearing on the hardship application. And that will be an opportunity for all of us, commissioners as well as you, having digested the application and the materials, listening to the testimony, to submit additional information and give us additional comment. The commissioners, I'm sure, will have comments and questions. And then we will all digest it after that, okay? So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, so I just want everyone to know we want people, we want to hear what your thoughts are. We want to get input and your analysis. So the hardship, just briefly, the statute, the Landmarks Law has a hardship provision in it. It always has. It was there as a sort of a fail-safe device to allow the Landmarks Law to sort of operate constitutionally, to allow people who felt and could prove that the law would, if you're a for-profit entity, for example, that you couldn't make money. That landmark regulation and designation would prevent you from making money. And there's a statutory provision in the law that says you're entitled to a 6% return if you are a for-profit entity, and you come in, show that you can't do it, and you're entitled to what's known as a hardship. Now, what a hardship means, and I'll talk about it in the context of the for-profit application, is simply that you come in, you make your case, you first apply to do whatever you want to do. In this case, let's say you want to demolish the building because you can't make any money. The commission looks at it purely from an appropriateness standpoint in the first instance. If we say it's not appropriate, and there's just the regular certificate of appropriateness grounds, then the commission then turns and says, okay, have you demonstrated that there is in a for-profit sense, a financial hardship? If the answer to that is yes, then the commission issues what's called the notice to proceed. In other words, it's not saying it's appropriate from an architectural or historical context to demolish the building or alter it in any way, but you've demonstrated your right under the hardship provisions to move forward, and you're entitled to do so. The law also has a provision for not-for-profit entities. Because there's not a profit test you could use for a for-profit entity, for a not-for-profit entity, it's a different standard. And the law, interestingly enough, and I'll just read to you because this is just sort of important to sort of understand, the law didn't anticipate the kind of application that's presently before the Landmarks Commission with the Saint Vincent application. Okay, the law anticipated a situation where a nonprofit was selling or leasing a property to an entity. And so the test that I'm about to read to you sort of reflects that. Okay, and so I know a lot of people have heard a lot of discussion about there's the statutory test and the judicial test. Well, the judicial test was created because the Landmarks Law itself didn't really have something that addressed what people realized was a common situation, which is where a nonprofit wants to use its own property, not to sell it or get rid of it, but to develop it in line with its charitable purposes. So what the law said for the sort of what's called the statutory test is that you're going to sell or lease the building. That's the first finding. That the improvement parcel, which includes the landmark, as exists time of the request, would not, if it was not exempt, be capable of earning a reasonable return. In other words, you couldn't, if you had an office building and you were going to sell it to somebody, they would have to show that as an office building you couldn't make money. Okay. And then the most important test is this: that such improvement has ceased to be adequate, suitable, or appropriate for use, for carrying out both the purposes of such owner, the charitable owner, to which it is devoted, and those purposes to which it has been devoted when acquired. Okay, unless the owner is no longer doing that sort of charitable purpose. And then in addition, there was a requirement that you had to be willing to move forward quickly to perform the work. In this case, it was demolition and reconstruction, demolish and reconstruct. So you couldn't just get a sort of a theoretical approval for a hardship. It had to be a real plan to move forward in an expeditious way. So what happened through case law is the recognition that where an owner was going to develop a property. And I think a really good example, there's been a couple of sort of nonprofit examples that are instructive to think about. Marymount School was one such example. Marymount School was a hardship application in 1982 where a Catholic school said they wanted to come in and put a gym on their landmark property up on the Upper East Side. And the commission found that the size of the gym was inappropriate to the building. But they brought a claim under hardship saying under new sort of state-of-the-art requirements for education, that women's education, or girls' education, whatever you want to call it, required gym, a full gym and athletic program that wasn't really available. It wasn't part of the program, the charitable purpose, when the school was founded, 100 years before. So there was hearings and discussions about where could they fit the gym somewhere else on their property. Were there other gyms nearby? There was discussion about why those other gyms wouldn't work for them. And then in addition, why it was necessary that you have a gym at all for this charitable purpose. And the commission found that, yes, the charitable purpose for a girls' school included nowadays gym. And you had to have a gym, and that was you needed it to carry out your charitable purpose. They looked at a lot of it. There was a lot of testimony about where you couldn't fit it somewhere else on the property. And they found that there was a hardship. Okay, under the judicial test. And the judicial test is basically a test that takes its cues from the statutory test. And what you needed to show was that the landmark regulation, and this is the language, physically or financially prevents or seriously interferes with the carrying out of the charitable purpose. So there's two important things here. One is that, do I need this?
Yeah.
Okay. No. I think that's right. Okay. Is this working?
No.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
It's not on.
Mark, you don't need it.
Okay, well,
Yes.
That was
Right on.
whatever.
Hello?
Yes, very well. So the important thing to sort of focus on the statute here, or the standard, I should say, is there's sort of four parts that sort of move around. One is that it physically or financially prevents or seriously interferes. It can be any one of those combinations. It doesn't have to be all of that. And so the commission, and it's not that the landmark regulation makes it impossible to carry out the charitable purpose. It's the landmark regulation seriously interferes with the carrying out of the charitable purpose. So that's the standard. And in addition, they added on the requirement, as with the statutory requirement, that there needed to be a real need to move forward in an expeditious way. So, for purposes of the Saint Vincent application, they are developing their property. They're proposing to develop property they own. They're not selling it. They're not leasing it. I mean, they're selling off the campus side, but that's not the subject of the hardship. The hardship is their decision to. They need a new hospital. They want to build a new hospital on the O'Toole site. So the application will be to demolish O'Toole and put up a new hospital. And so what will be presented to the Landmarks Commission is the need for that new hospital, why the existing hospital is inadequate for carrying out the charitable purposes, seriously interferes or financially prevents, or seriously interferes or prevents the carrying out of the charitable purpose. And as part of that, and I think we've all seen a little bit of, and I'm not going to speak for them, obviously can speak for themselves, but as many of you were there at the hearings, the commissioners are interested in what can you retrofit the existing hospital? Why can't you do that? Could you put it somewhere else, on property they own? Could you split it up and put parts here and parts there? Those are going to be the kinds of questions that the commissioners are going to be asking and that the applicant will have to answer. So I think that, and there's time periods for all this, and I can get into that if people are interested. But that's the basic standard, and there will be, the commission has requested and is going to get assistance from people in the from the EDC and other agencies who have expertise in helping us sort of analyze the submissions that will be coming in from the hospital about, regulations, for hospital regulations and the various development costs and that sort of thing. So with that, I could open up to questions, or do you want to go?
Yeah, if I could just ask we'll take questions from the committee members, but what is the public's role in the hardship determination as far as public comment? How does that fit into the LPC's assessment of the...
Right. It's no different than with every other application. I mean, whether it be designation or any other, just as we took very seriously the comments that you all took the time and energy to give to us on the initial application, it will be the same thing. Commissioners will listen and they'll take into account what people have to say. And again, I think speaking for myself, I should say that I was quite impressed, having been in the commission now for 12 years, at the quality of most of the testimony on this matter, that people really, were focusing on issues that matter to us. I mean, the commission can't take into account things that a lot of people, construction noise. I mean, that's not something the commission can do. And that the people need to focus on the kinds of issues that are really before us. And so with respect to the hardship application, it's really going to be focusing on and responding to the hospital's arguments for why they need this new hospital and why it's important and why the existing hospital really is not adequate for carrying out their charitable purposes to deliver the highest quality health care in the city.
And does or will the commission look at the finances of the applicant in terms of hardship? Is that something that will be debated?
Well, I think that the issue about finances as formulated currently, the applicant's claim is primarily that the existing building physically prevents it carrying out its charitable purpose. To the extent that there are discussions of alternatives, finances will come into it. But I think that as a general matter, their claim is, and I'll let them again speak for themselves, that they need a new hospital because the physical plant of the existing hospital is inadequate to carry out their charitable purposes into the future.
So why don't we take some questions from committee members? Yes, Joe Hamilton.
I would like to ask you about timing.
Just
sure.
Into the microphone.
I'm just asking about timing.
Yeah, sure.
You said earlier that there were timing issues, and I just thought we should all know about those.
Yeah, the timing issues, are so as a general matter, this application, like all certificates of appropriateness, we have 90 days to act on the application once it's deemed complete. Okay, and we pretty much deem an application complete when we're ready to sort of bring it forward to a hearing. So the hearing, we will start counting the 90 days, the statutory 90 days, from probably tonight. Actually, we got the submission today. Okay, yeah. But I think as a practical matter, I think we've spoken to Saint Vincent about the process here, and they understand that it may go beyond the 90 days, and I think they're willing to sort of walk through and give everyone enough time to sort of deal with the complexity of the issues that are all before us. So we have 90 days to act. What happens at 90 days is the Commission must make what's known as a preliminary determination of insufficient return. It's a little anachronistic because it doesn't necessarily, that's the term the statute uses. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're making a financial conclusion in this case because they're not coming in on a financial basis necessarily. It just means that they've demonstrated hardship. As a preliminary matter, we've demonstrated hardship. The statute then sets forth a 180-day period for the Commission at its option, there's no requirement, at its option to try to put together a plan to ameliorate the hardship application. And for example, in the statutory test, where you're selling or leasing, if the Commission finds an alternative buyer or an alternative seller who, within that 180 days, who is willing to purchase the property and basically waive any rights under the hardship application, the owner of the landmark is required to enter into a contract and to alienate the property, or enter into a contract to do that with the owner. This is where they're developing it themselves. That plan is a little harder to sort of understand how it would really work in this case. But there's an opportunity for the commission to work with its experts to consider the evidence before it and come up with an alternative plan that would make save the landmark in part or whole or something like that. And then if after that period of 180 days there's there's no plan or it's a plan that is not accepted, then there's a 90-day period where the commission could say to the city, we recommend that you buy this property. And then there's another. They have 90 days to basically condemn or to start condemnation proceedings or buying the property. And after that, if that doesn't happen, then you have the notice to proceed to move ahead. Yes. Sure, let's go ahead.
So on June 3rd, there's supposed to be what you call a public meeting, right? As opposed to a public hearing. And
Right.
I would like to know if you could explain the fine points between both.
Yeah. Because of this complex application, there are two things that are going to happen on June 3rd. One is that, I think as everyone knows, the Rudens have proposed a new development that saves 4 of the buildings on the campus, what I call the campus side, east side. And they did that in response to the comments that the commissioners gave at their public meeting. So, leaving aside, just pretending this is not Saint Vincent for a moment, this is any old certificate of appropriateness project, where the commission gives people direction, says, look, this is too tall, this is too big, materials are this, and sends them back. It comes back, because it's an open application, it comes back at a public meeting. That's technically what it's at. But the commission, through long-standing practice, will, if the changes are really significant, will open it up and send it back through the public process, which Chair Tierney indicated at April 15th he was going to do. That he was going to send it back through the public process. So because it's so significant, we want to get public involvement and testimony again. So with respect to the Ruden development, that's what's happening. That is what people are going to be looking at. And we will be taking testimony on that. And it's possible. I mean, that, like, again, leaving aside the hearing gets too loaded when you talk about the existing, the current application. If it's just any old application, if it came back to a public meeting, the commissioners could say, you did a great job, you did exactly what we said, and could approve it right then. They could say, you did a great job, but we have these further refinements, and it might come back for a third time at a public meeting at which there would be no public testimony. Because the theory is, it's basically, you've testified on it, now it's more on the refinement side, and we don't need to get additional testimony. We've heard what people had to say, and now the commission in its own expertise is going to finish the project. Okay? So, but theoretically, if it was said, okay, it needs to be like, this has happened sometimes when you have a really tall building that's first, proposed, it comes down, it keeps coming down. If it's each time it's really significant, the commission, at its discretion, can say we want to put it back to the public process. So there's going to be, that's the Ruden side. But the hospital side, this is a new application, so technically it is a public hearing. But what will happen in July is there will just be 2 more public meetings, to hear it all. But we'll open it up again for public comment on the hospital side, and we'll have to see what the story is and the commissioner's reaction to the Ruden proposal. It may be that they don't need additional testimony, and they'll. I can't speak for them. I don't know what they'll do.
So Mark, just to be clear, I've been told by staff at LPC that you won't be that the commissioners won't be voting at the June meeting.
The commissioners will not be voting on anything at the June.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
David Gruber, I'm chair of the institutions. Can you go over, let's say the commission finds for St. Vincent's that it's a hardship. Does that mean that there's a de facto approval of the building that they propose to build once you find for a hardship?
No, the commission, at this point, we would retain jurisdiction to decide whether the building as proposed is, appropriate to the district. If the hospital decides that the square foot, that there's a minimum hospital it needs in order to meet its charitable purpose, and that's demonstrated, then the commission could find that minimum, but that could still mean it could be small. We could change the design, and deal with its bulk and materials and stuff like that.
So you'll reach out to other city agencies to determine their expertise in hospital construction and things to make that determination whether St. Vincent's needs that bulk and height for its hospital or not. Because I'm just trying to figure this out. Because you could tell them that they can demolish the building. You could find their hardship, or the other many options that you can present to them, and then say to them, look, you can't go more than 215 feet or whatever. And they say, well, that's not sufficient for us, but you'll have the expertise to say, yes, that it is, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think the idea is that it will get people to help us and understand, and again, the hospital will be making a claim as to what the needs are, because part of saying, that we have a hardship here is they need to explain why they need this particular hospital.
So just lastly, if this is a new application, does it come to the community board? Does a hardship application and what they're proposing come to the community board?
That's happening today.
For resolution?
Well, I'm not speaking of the community board, but the application you have before you today on the hardship is in fact the new application.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I should point out that, again, thank the LPC, because as I understand it, you're not obligated to return this application back to the community board for further review.
Well, again, because it's complex, remember, the hardship application is a new application.
Right.
So, there's nothing in the law, unlike Euler, that requires that the community board be sent or referred to any certificate of appropriateness application. The commission has always, or since I've been around, has always referred it out to the community board for their comment. Chair Tierney has really formalized that requirement now in a much more formal and sort of rigid, in many ways, way. So any new application that goes to the commission is referred out to the community board.
So we thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, and so yes, so the route, the application for the route side is a different story, and that again is long-standing practice because it's a major change. We would send it back to the office.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah.
Question about precedent. Albert Bennett, I'm a public member of the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 2, Manhattan. I've heard that over the 40 years, there have been either 17 or 19 of these applications. And I've also heard that 14 or 16 of them were approved. Has there ever been an application from a hospital before? All the ones that I've heard about were churches and museums. And I'm curious to know if there is any precedent for it.
Well, there's no precedent in the sense that there's no hospital hardship application.
This is a hospital that is applying for. This would be the first
correct
hardship application from a hospital.
Right.
I have a Keenberger. If the Landmarks Commission finds that they need a new hospital, do you also figure out if it has to go there? It sounds like for Marymount School, you found alternate places for a gym before you.
No, I think that what the commission did in Marymount is ask, did you was an alternative, where there's something you could, nearby, places you could rent, and food facilities. And what they basically said was they couldn't find any that were adequate, and they presented testimony as to why those other sites were not adequate. It does not. There's nothing in the record that I can see, and I wasn't here at the time for Marymount, that requires that they go out and look at every single possible site in the city. It's like, that's the hospital, in this case. They would have to show that where, did they consider and where did they look for other locations. At the last hearing, for example, one of the commissioners asked about other property they own, and could the new hospital be built there? And again, all them speak for themselves. They responded they were tenants at most of those, and that the one building they did own was too small from a footprint standpoint to build a new hospital. And that's the kind of stuff that the commissioner will consider. Did they talk to anybody else? Were there was some talk about a merger? How did that go? So that's the best I can say.
Trevor Stewart, I'm a public member of the Omnibus Committee. Just have a question about the approach that's being taken. I think it would be true to say in the hearings and everything, the evidence up until now, the Ruden development and the new hospital development have been very intimately linked. And I think the position has been that the Ruden project needed to go ahead in order to finance the Saint Vincent one. And I guess my expectation was that the hardship case would have revolved around the need to get the money. You're indicating that that's now kind of been de-linked in a sense, and the two separate projects are now kind of compartmentalized. So the Ruden one is going ahead basically for a certificate of appropriateness, and that's quite separate from the position from the application that's being made on the hospital building, which has to, as I understand you, now relates to the physical suitability of the building for their mission as opposed to the hardship and as opposed to financial hardship. Could you just clarify that?
I don't let the hospital decide whether they're linked or de-linked. Since there was not a hardship application before, and to the extent the hospital was describing the situation, I think it's probably best to think of it as the hospital describing why they were proceeding in the manner they were proceeding, and why it made sense and why they how. Because again, one of the things that's important for us is for the commission, not that it's necessarily salient to its decision making under certificate of appropriateness, but it's how did this application get to us? Why is it here the way it is? And that's very much what they were saying.
So is it true that the hardship application is not so much about finances but about charitable purpose?
That as it's been submitted and it's developed to date, that's the argument that they're saying. Yeah.
So the Ruden portion of it, therefore, the commissioners might deem not salient to the hardship.
The commissioners are not going to consider, the price, if you will, that the Rudens are or willing or will or might pay for purposes of the new hospital.
Carol Kreiser?
Well, basically, Trevor asked a question that I was going to ask, and now I'm going to follow up with the fact that Ruden was paying, say, X amount for the property initially. Now that they're going to be doing different things with it, that price might change, and so that's one thing that should be taken into consideration. But also, I'm really puzzled by your answer that you just gave, saying that you're going to let the hospital make the decision as to how they're doing this presentation. And I would think that the Landmarks Commission would be the one to decide how these things should be handled, not in terms of...
Right. What I meant by that is to the extent that they are decoupled, from a sort of there's still a link. At the end of the day, theoretically, at the end of the day, there is the commission, to the extent it approves a new development at the campus site, whether or not that results in the Ruden company, if it ends up paying the hospital I guess it's testimony of the less than $301 million or something less than that, and how that may affect the hospital's ability to finance the new hospital. That's not something the commission is considering. That's because that's not a factor in the hardship application. Okay, the hardship application now is really about the physical inability to carry out the charitable purposes given their hospital building. And cost of maintaining the buildings, running a hospital in this complex of buildings, all those things will come up, but it's really about their need for, as they put it, state-of-the-art, equipment to continue to deliver high-quality medical.
Does that mean that you won't look at all of the other options that they might have had initially before they went into this arrangement with the room?
And what do you mean by that?
Because there were apparently other proposals given to them that would have resulted, would have had different results.
I don't know if that's the case with respect to the as I understand the proposals that were out there. All of them assumed the demolition of the O'Toole building and the construction. There may have been different. And the construction of a new hospital on that site. Okay.
Gary Tomei, I'm on the Omnibus Committee. This, as you seem to indicate, is this working?
Yes.
You seem to indicate this is a case of a kind of a first impression, because it's quite different than the other cases that are involved here, or that you have cited. This seems to me to be a situation where a hardship is being claimed. It's hard for me to understand how you delink, is the word you use, which may not be appropriate, but how do you delink the east part of the eastern parcel and the western parcel, in that the hospital cutting off its eastern parcel? It therefore then comes before you as the LPC and asks for a hardship on the O'Toole site, which in essence is a hardship of their own making. So it becomes very difficult for me to comprehend, and perhaps it's not, this is not my forte, but it becomes difficult for me to comprehend how the hospital can put itself into a position where it can claim a hardship with respect to the O'Toole building and not talk about anything about the eastern side. Because if they sold it off, they are now putting themselves into a position where they have one particular parcel which they claim is insufficient for their uses.
What will be is that I thought I sort of stated this earlier, but they will be. The commissioners are going to ask, why can't you put the new hospital? Why can't you retrofit the existing building? The hospital will have to answer that question. They're going to have to answer the question, why can't they, put the hospital? Is it possible to build a new hospital elsewhere on their campus? So there's going to be discussions about those things.
It seems to me also that those questions lead to other questions, such as what Carol and perhaps Trevor indicated. We don't know whether or not there are other sites. We have just been told that. And it seems to me that the hospital is differentiating between the Sisters of Charity and itself on one hand, but when they introduce their application, they talk about the Sisters of Charity. So,
we're going to hear more about from Shelley about the actual application. We're just talking about the process now.
The other thing about the cases are that they say that you do not have to use the buildings, do not have to be used for their highest purpose. In other words, language is that they don't have to use to their maximum use. And that is something I would ask that the commission take into consideration. The fact that they want to build a quote, state-of-the-art hospital doesn't mean that they, under the law or under the cases as I see them, give them that right. Because if they can perform their charitable purpose, not perhaps to its ultimate potential, they still fall below the standard as far as I can see. But, I'm not...
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the committee or the community board? Any community board members have questions? If not, Mark, because we have to finish up this portion by 8. Do you have any final comments that you'd like? Did you want to respond to that? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark. A round of applause. Just to let you know that we are videotaping this, so if you want to go back and rewind Mark's description and parse out the words, maybe study it for further use, it's going to be on the CB2 website, cb2manhattan.org. And Saint Vincent's presentation they're going to be describing it to you, but it's up at svmc.org. Before I introduce Shelley Friedman from Saint Vincent's, I'm going to introduce some of the elected official reps who are here with us tonight. Danielle Picara from Speaker Quinn's office is here. Oh, Danielle Circle. Sorry. Mr. Blaine. Crystal Goldpond from Senator Duane's office. Matt Gordon from Assembly Member Glick's office. Aaron Drinkwater from Congressman Nadler's office. Brian Cook from Manhattan Borough President Scott Schroeder's office. And Carter Booth from Community Board 2 is here. And I hope I've not missed any. Bo Garbano, who's first, second vice chair. He's now first vice chair, so she screwed up. And now I'm going to introduce Shelley Friedman, who's representing St. Vincent's. First I'm going to introduce the CEO of St. Vincent's Medical Center, Henry Amoroso, who will then introduce Shelley Friedman.
I will speak very quickly because I know your business is pressing tonight. Our business is pressing with you tonight. I want to begin by saying thank you to all of you in the committee, to those of you in the community board, to those of you from the neighborhood. It seems like we're becoming good friends at these meetings. And I get the opportunity to meet some of you periodically on the street. And I thank you for your kind words, your encouraging words. I thank you for your advice, when gently offered. Not nearly as appreciative as the advice I might get in some of the taverns late at night. But nonetheless, I understand how important this is to all of us. It might not seem it, and I do mean this sincerely and genuinely. I always try, before I speak, to put myself in shoes of those who might object to this for very good reasons. And then, of course, return to the shoes I'm obligated to wear, and that is to advance the interests of St. Vincent's and her best desire to serve this community. And it might not seem that we have not listened well, but it seems to me that we have. This is just 10 months now since I've joined St. Vincent's, and it's been a rollicking fun time. And I'm thankful to you for providing all the opportunity for me to be entertained. But truthfully, what has been good is to hear such a chorus of views, so many very different stakeholders who have very different agendas and legitimate agendas. There are days I literally hear, do not allow the triangle to become open public space. It might invite people into the triangle that we don't want to have there. Just 2 hours later, I will hear, please open the triangle to public space and allow it to flower and to bloom and to be used by all. Please change the look of the building. We know we need a new Saint Vincent's, but it needs to be shorter and fatter, and don't worry about the views of the people around it. And then I hear just a couple hours later on those same streets, please, can you make the building a little taller, a little bit more narrow? If there's going to be a tall building in the village, it ought to be a hospital. And the only way, it seems, that everyone's voices will be heard is if we go through the processes that have been set up for us to go through. So we patiently and deliberately and meaningfully and substantively go through these processes, knowing at the end of the day that I think our collective dialogue will produce something that is satisfactory to the majority of folks. And that is, I hope, a new Saint Vincent's Hospital delivering to this community and beyond the type of healthcare needs and services that the community needs, and moreover, a series of buildings that are appropriate contextually and architecturally to this community. So tonight we hope to take a gigantic leap forward in that direction and present to you two significant changes. One which incorporates from the Rudin family significant modifications to the plan, incorporating the comments that you have all made, and that the Landmarks Commission has made, and also to introduce to you a slight reconfiguration, but perhaps meaningful, of our hospital. Not so much a reduction in square footage, but a reduction in the overall height that brings it under just slightly under the number of 300 feet. That might not be consolation to many of you here, but I hope you see it as our attempt to try to accommodate your concerns. It would be inappropriate for me to end without thanking the elected officials, Congressman Nadler, Speaker Quinn, Borough President Stringer, Senator Duane, Assemblymember Glick, and Assemblymember Godfrey. But I think it would be more appropriate for me to thank their staffs who have patiently sat through numerous meetings, difficult meetings, and have always objectively advanced the interests of every single stakeholder that's been involved in this process. And they are looking to see that we all remain focused on doing what is best for our collective well-being. So thank you again for the time, for your commitment, for the hard work, and for the spirit in which your comments are offered. With that, I'd like to introduce our counsel, who might walk us through some of our perspective on the hardship application. Thank you very much.
That standard is in addition to the standard in the legislation that applies to commercial or profit-motivated landowners, but the statute, by virtue of these court cases, has been considered to be ill-considered and only partially applicable to charitable institutions, and therefore the court came up in 1968 with its own standard. And that's the standard on which this application is based. And I want to focus, because it really will define most of what I'm going to say to you tonight, with two kind of pivotal phrases in this language, so that you can understand how grounded the application is in this judicial doctrine, which is the law under which and by which the Commission will determine the case. The second sentence, a comparable test for a charity would be where the maintenance of the landmark either physically or financially. Now that's a choice. It's not both, but the test can be successfully met by either a showing that deals with the physical hardships that St. Vincent's faces in town center, or the financial. And when Mark said that that's something that's up to the applicant, it's not that the applicant is telling the commission what to do, it's that the statute provides these tests, and we're trying to explain to you that our application will be focused on the physical hardship aspect rather than the financial aspect. You could well understand that financial hardship might play a role in an institution which was abandoning a piece of property, which is exactly what this case was in 1968, where a charitable institution had abandoned several buildings on Staten Island and had no other use for them, and was forced financially to continue to maintain them year after year, could not sell them because of the landmarks designation, or so it applied to the commission to say. And at the end of the day, the commission found that the financial drain on this charitable institution to maintain these landmarks was unjustified. That would be a case where finances might play a role. But in a dynamic institution such as Saint Vincent's, where there is a very, very good purpose that the institution wants to put to the land, in this case, a new state-of-the-art hospital, then the test can just as easily be that it's having physical difficulties finding an opportunity to build this hospital on any other land that it owns or that it might find available. And therefore, it's not the opposite of financial, it's simply a different standard. And that's the standard in which this application is moving forward. The phrasing continues, physically or financially prevents or seriously interfering in not the charitable purposes. Again, one need not prove that it prevents. One need only prove that it seriously interferes, gets in the way of. We believe that we're in pretty good territory to say prevents. That we can take the stronger of the two options and make an adequate and more than adequate case for the approval of the application. So this is the standard by which we are proceeding. This is the standard on which the application has been filed. As has been said, it's available to you online. Copies have gone to the elected officials and also they're on file at the commission. And they're available for anyone to see. This is the table of contents from the statement of findings for the approval. And I want to just briefly describe them to you. It's not my purpose tonight to orally argue the statement in every point, but merely to let you know what we're saying and why we're saying it, so that you can understand how we believe the commission should be reviewing the application in front of it. Obviously, the application begins with a description of the O'Toole building. And again, the land in the building in this instance is not Saint Vincent's Hospital. It's not Hoylman or any of the other buildings. This is an application is limited to the demolition of the O'Toole building. And the only aspect that's being discussed in this application are the difficulties associated with the hospital finding any other site on which to build an acute care hospital other than the site it owns, which is the O'Toole building. There is another site which it owns, and I'll speak to that in a moment, but the very narrow focus of this application deals only with one site and the decision to demolish it. Current uses and conditions of O'Toole are defined. As you know, it's not really an active hospital building. It's more of a clinical building. Doctors see patients in it. The hospital has some clinics in it. It's offices. It has a commercial certificate of occupancy. It's a medical, what used to be known as a medical arts building primarily, and it has no real connection with the medical services that are provided by an acute care hospital, other than to provide an adjacent building for its doctors to see patients and do their work in a clinical format. 1.3, the landmarks approval process, pretty much defines what you've heard about tonight, what you've experienced with us since the beginning of these applications in December, the various public hearings, the various applications that have been submitted, and it describes where we are up to this point. And then 1.4 is essentially what you did see there, and that is a discussion of how we arrive at the conclusion that the Sailor Snug Harbor language is the law in New York State with regard to hardships for 1968. Article 2 of the statement deals with the hardship itself and defines the various aspects of the charitable purpose as St. Vincent's sees it. You have heard in our testimony before about its history, about the history of the Sisters of Charity, about the continuity of its provision of health care, about its emphasis on health care for the poor, on its emphasis in Greenwich Village, and on the importance that it sees in its charitable purpose in being located in Greenwich Village and serving Greenwich Village. You've also heard from us speak of the role that St. Vincent's is perceived to play in the network of healthcare in New York City as a level 1 trauma center and as really the only acute care hospital on the West Side. You've heard us say that there are 5 public health hospitals in Manhattan. 4 of them are on the Far East Side, and 1 of them is in northern Manhattan. There isn't even a public hospital on the west side of Manhattan, because traditionally St. Vincent's has played that role in the firmament of this city's public health policy, and hopefully will continue to do so. The 2.2 deals with the deficiencies that we have in the current buildings, the problems with the floor plates, the problems with 8 separate buildings being bound together, with several separate staircases and 17 different elevator banks and 23 different elevators. How none of the buildings are connected above a certain floor. How the buildings are in aging condition, and while kept modern for healthcare purposes, their infrastructure, their internal piping, their electricity, their air quality, and the like, which everyone understands. Regulators who have not only found that there must be a St. Vincent's Hospital, but that St. Vincent's Hospital must modernize, must prepare itself for the 21st century, and must do so can be maintained and strengthened. Profiling the modern St. Vincent's Hospital, again, turns to third-party validators for what you need to do when you want to build a new hospital. A new hospital is not like building a new office building or a new house. There are regulations. There are regulators that oversee the process. There are design standards which voluntary associations like the American Institutes of Architects have specifically designed for new hospital construction. All of these have to be considered, and all of these have to be incorporated into the thinking of what goes into a new hospital. It's not simply a matter of what St. Vincent's wants to build. It's a matter of what St. Vincent's needs to build in order to get the regulatory approvals necessary to do its business. The profiling also comes to certain conclusions about what the size of the hospital needs to be, the number of beds it needs to have, the services it needs to have, the adjacencies it needs to have, and the like. At the end of that section, the conclusion is that in order for St. Vincent's to really serve its function and serve its charitable purpose, it needs to build a 600,000 to 650,000 square foot modern acute care hospital and trauma center. The next section, 2.6, goes into further depth in designing that hospital, the requirements that St. Vincent's needs to follow, and the programming that St. Vincent's wants to follow in order to meet the population that it needs to serve, meet the regulatory approvals, and meet the ability to sustain what is being required of it and asked of it as a modern hospital. 2.7 includes an element that we have talked about from the very beginning, and that is going green. There is every reason that St. Vincent's believes that it is a necessary component of its charitable mission to be as environmentally sustainable as possible with regard to its new hospital, the construction of its new hospital, and the operation of the hospital. And so we have put in this section a number of factors that the hospital needs to consider so that it can produce a sustainable green hospital. 2.8 deals with prescriptive assumptions. Clearly, in any kind of humane endeavor, one has to be limited by practical considerations of the site, practical considerations of simply scale, and just how much one can pursue at any one time. This section goes into many of the limitations that St. Vincent's feels it must operate under. Some of them are regulatory. It needs to provide a certain amount of space. It needs to provide a certain number of beds. It needs to provide certain departments. It certainly needs to maintain the level 1 trauma center that it's famed to have, and is serving a good part of Manhattan. These are the kinds of operating assumptions that have gone in to the design of the new hospital as it's been modified that we're going to see. And so then we end in chapter 3, which is a series of kind of cascading policy determinations and conclusions that drive home the fact that at the end of the day, the O'Toole site is the only site that St. Vincent's has within its realm by which it can build a new state-of-the-art acute care hospital and trauma center. And we begin with many of the assumptions that were questioned from the board early on. The first one being that the existing St. Vincent's Hospital cannot be renovated to achieve the goal of a modern acute care hospital. That is something that many of you have probably seen firsthand, but it's also something that you've heard testimony on. There's a substantial body of material that is going in with this application about why the hospital can't renovate to achieve the status that it needs to achieve. That deals with existing floor plates. It deals with adjacencies. It deals with the widths of the structural steel, the steel that creates the bays in which floors are filled out. It deals with ceiling heights, floor heights specifically. The second conclusion is that the existing hospital cannot be demolished to serve as a site for a modern acute care hospital and trauma center. It may seem an obvious point, but some people have actually questioned whether St. Vincent's should just close its doors, tear down Lincoln Coleman, and start all over again by building on the footprint of Lincoln Coleman. We have done that now. We have provided our position and explanation that hospitals simply can't close their doors, disperse their doctors, disperse their staffs, disperse their equipment, and hope that it's the same institution when several years later they reopen. Nor can the regional medical network tolerate such a disruption, specifically with the St. Vincent's. We go on. The site of the building owned by St. Vincent's Hospital to the east of Coleman and Link cannot be used as the site for a modern acute care hospital and trauma center. There were several comments that perhaps a mid-block tower ought to be built next to Coleman and Link, and then upon its completion, Coleman and Link could be emptied out into the new hospital. That was a matter that was discussed at length at one community task force meeting. First of all, now that the Landmarks Commission has decided that Spelman and Nurses are significant buildings, there isn't going to be any demolition east of New York Hospital, the hospital that involves those two sites. So the only sites that would be available for clearance for a new hospital would be Reese and Cronin. And in our view, those sites could not support the kind of hospital that was necessary to meet the hospital's charitable purposes. See, I told you it was getting close. My third page. It goes on. We go on into 3.6. O'Toole cannot remain on the site to serve.
Sorry, how many chapters are there?
There's just
one. That's it. Okay.
Very few others.
Okay, good.
Very few others. We only have really 2 others. But it's a cascading kind of discussion that leads to the fact that there's no opportunity to build a modern hospital east of 7th Avenue. The shift then goes, well, what other sites does St. Vincent's own? St. Vincent's only owns one other site besides O'Toole, and that's staff housing on 7th Avenue between 16th and 15th. And we analyzed what a new hospital on that site would look like. It would be well over 300 feet high, and it would have to absorb much more than the existing hospital because it would not have the materials center next door on the triangle. It would have to include loading bays, it would have to include the oxygen tanks, and as a result of that, the staff housing site could not possibly serve as a site for the new hospital. hospital. So then we come back to O'Toole. And the final chapter in this cascading series of determinations is that we cannot build a new hospital with O'Toole on the site. We have an engineering report to back that up. We also, and I welcome any of you to take a look at it, but at the end of the day, it would be not only a horrendously costly affair, but more importantly, it would be a horrendously inefficient affair to try and build the kind of truss system through the middle of O'Toole that one would need to support the bed tower above it. At the same time, we were putting 4 stories under O'Toole. I mean, that's simply an engineering Napoleon that nobody wants to take on. And we have the final analysis, the final line in this cascading series of determinations. There's only one site, and that it needs to be cleared, and that it would be a hardship to Saint Vincent's charitable purposes to not be able to demolish the O'Toole building to serve as the site of a new hospital. The design of the new hospital remains, as Mark said, with regard to in the jurisdiction of the Landmarks Commission. We would still hope, with the changes you're going to hear about in a minute, that the hospital would receive a certificate of appropriateness and therefore wouldn't need a hardship. I want to comment on one other aspect of Mark's comments about the timing involved. The process involved deals again with the commercial, profit-motivated aspect of the hardship application. I will tell you that in the Marymount application that Mark referred to, the application was submitted in March and was approved in July of the same year. So when one's not dealing with the financial aspects of the city's involvement in trying to find buyers and things like that, things can happen without the kind of time frames that Mark was ascribing to the commercial side of the hardship process. That really is the table of contents, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. A question from C.J. Shiner, who asks, does the bankruptcy court have any input on the hardship issue?
No. This application, once again, is founded on physical difficulties that the hospital has in finding a site for a new building. That the rooms have, that there is a transaction that involves bankruptcy, that there's a transaction that involves the rooms on the east side of 7th Avenue is immaterial to the application, because the application assumes all of the assumptions that one had to look at before even trying to sell the site. Do we try and renovate? Do we try and tear down this hospital and build on site? Do we build in the middle of the block? Do we build on staff housing? All of those issues are irrelevant to bankruptcy, and they're all irrelevant to the involvement of the rooms in the transaction that we know of.
Any questions from community board members or omnibus committee members? If not, we're going to go straight to the architect's presentation. I want to acknowledge Sean Sweeney, as a community board member who just joined us. So thank you, Shelley.
Thank you all.
That was a tough act to follow. Let's see.
Could this be raised so we all can see it?
There's got to be a way that can happen.
It's not. Yeah. We couldn't read, folks.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's
Much better.
perfect. Yeah. It looks something like this.
John Gilbert is going to give us an update on the public school that the Rubin organization helped facilitate. So, John.
Good evening, everyone. While we're dealing with this technical, I think probably the projector was moved, the bulb went. We do have a second projector. I did want to talk about the announcement that was made last week with the mayor and Chancellor Klein, Sharon Greenberger from School Construction Authority, the Rubin family, the Foundling Hospital, elected officials, all joined together to talk about a new school that will be created in the base of the Foundling Hospital located at 596th Avenue. Very excited about this. As the first time I stood up, was asked to speak before the Omnibus Housing or the Omnibus Committee. I talked about how when the Rubin family develops, they begin a conversation. And I think the school is a perfect example of that in terms of, we heard loud and clear from the community that additional seats were needed. This school will consist of 563 seats. It will be pre-K through 5th grade. It will be a agreement between the SCA and the Foundling Hospital. The proceeds from the sale will do a number of wonderful things. Not only will it create a public school in this community, it will also help create a charter school in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, which will help kids who have different issues that they've got to deal with, as well as to create a brand new state-of-the-art pediatric nursing facility up in Yonkers, which will serve the needs of our neediest kids. If you've ever been in the Foundling Hospital, it's truly an amazing place, and the work that they do with the neediest of kids is really amazing. In the words of Sharon Greenberger, these are not my words, but I think was in response to a question asked by Joe Hamilton in terms of the Rubin role of this in creating a school. Sharon said, without the Rubin family and without their being involved, the school would never have happened. So on behalf of the Rubin family, I'm very, very pleased and proud to be a part of this. The idea, the kernel of the idea literally came in a meeting with the principal of PS 41. And in that meeting with Bernadette King-Bez and Michael Fagan from Saint Vincent's, we were able to, when the problem was presented to us, the thought jumped in my head, and literally on my way to that meeting, Sharon Greenberger from the SCA had called and asked, can't the Rubins kind of do something to help us with this education issue? And in that meeting, it dawned on me that we knew that this building was coming online and that this was an opportunity that should not be missed. Literally the next day, SCA responded. We got the SCA's architect in there. We did a tour. Not all buildings can become schools. You need ceiling heights. You need different means of egress. You need cafeterias. You need kitchens. And this building has all of those attributes. So, again, on behalf of the Rubin family, we're really proud and pleased to be involved with this. And this is going to be a wonderful, wonderful school. It will be named the Foundling School. And it also allows Foundling to stay in the neighborhood, to continue the good work that they do in terms of dealing with healthcare and education. Those are the two missions that the Sisters of Charity, that is their mission in terms of what they do and did and have done for the last 150 years. So that's about all I can say on that. And thank you very much.
Thanks again. I know I speak to the Community Board and King Berger, the Social Services and Education Committee, how excited we are. Thank you as the Rubin organizations for listening to the community on this important point. And it's be a great legacy to your interest and involvement in our community. So thank you. Okay. So we have a station break here. Any GBVA announcements? I can introduce Bob Gormley, the district manager. And David Siegel, our pro bono videographer. Andrew Berman from the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation. Alan Amato from the Villager. And Downtown Express, I might add.
I got your picture on the cover.
Do the stories on Saint Vincent run in the Downtown Express?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure. Jefferson Siegel from the Villager, photographer.
For the Rudin family on the, as Mark Silverman said, on the campus side, on the legacy side of the project. Over the last few months, we've heard a series of comments that culminated, I guess, a little less than 2 weeks ago in some commentary from the commissioners regarding our plan, and really they crystallize into three things. One is a historic preservation aspect. I think the commissioners opined in a very clear way that 4 of the buildings on the campus side on east of 7th Avenue would be deemed inappropriate to demolish, and therefore in our scheme we're proposing a adaptive reuse and historic preservation of those, and those are Nurses, Smith, Raskob on 12th Street, and Spellman on 11th Street. I'll show you the details in a moment. That's number 1. Number 2 was a bulk distribution question, really that the Avenue building was too big, was overscaled. We have, with the preservation and adaptive reuse of Raskob, which is the building at the corner of 12th and 7th, it sort of naturally makes for a better 7th Avenue building. I'll show you that in a moment. And the third issue is really one of architectural language, of appropriateness to the Greenwich Village area district, and that the previous proposal was perhaps not sharp enough in terms of its direct relationship to the existing fabric in its architectural language. So with that introduction, I believe I'm going to show you a design that's responsive to all 3 of those major issues. So this is an aerial photograph. This is 7th. This is 12th. You see the buildings along 12th Street here, Raskob, Smith, Nurses, and Rice. And from the ground, this is the Rice building. In our proposal that we just resubmitted or submitted to the commission, which Mark said was available on the website, we are proposing to demolish this building and replace it with a residential building. Nurses, I think all the commissioners came out and said it should be preserved and adaptively reused, and that's what we're proposing to do. We're going to, our proposal is to fix it up, to repair it, and to adaptively reuse it as a residential building. I will go into some of the modifications we are asking the commission to approve. It's very similarly with Smith and Raskob, which are the 2 buildings built very close to each other in time and next to each other physically along 12th and 7th Avenue. So here's what they look like from the street. Now when you go to the opposite side, this is 7th. 7th Avenue South, Greenwich, 11th Street here. There are 3 structures or 4. One is Hoylman and second is Link. We're proposing to tear those down. Spellman, which is on just east of Link, we're proposing to adaptively reuse with some modifications, not only to windows, but also very much to the bulkhead on the top of the building, which you can see right here. And then Cronin, which is at the end, which we are also proposing to demolish. So these 2 buildings will come down in our plan. Spellman, which I just want to pause on, we are proposing to renovate, to historically preserve, to repoint, to replace windows, to repair the fabric on. Also, there's this bulkhead here and this T extension in the rear yard, which we are proposing to remove and put a much smaller addition on top than what's there today. To understand Spellman, you really have to see this, what I call scar tissue here, this area where the previous building came up to it. Here's the historic photograph. That was what existed on the site previously. And here you can see where that existing building came up and touched it. Spellman. So really, in our mind, what really distinguishes Spellman is its street wall and not necessarily the bulk above it, which is pretty utilitarian. And then finally, Cronin, which we are proposing to demolish, and in this case, we will replace this building with 5 townhouses, which we've changed the design significantly from the previous. The mechanical bulkhead, replaced it with a masonry new floor here, and then 2 new floors above. And what you see here is the 7th Avenue building beyond, 50 feet beyond the property line. By way of overview, this is 7th Avenue now. That's 12th, that's 11th. This is Greenwich as it comes across. And here is the new proposal. You can see the end of Rascott here. This was about 202 feet in width at the tower portion, and now it's about 142 feet in width. The whole building has come down 30 feet. And then this is 11th Street, 6th Avenue, the townhouses that come across here existing, Cronin, Spellman with its bulkhead, Link and Hoylman, and this is the proposal. The townhouses, 5 new townhouses now that are all much more uniform in feel. Spellman, which has been adaptively reused, taking off the bulkhead, a 5-story street wall piece, and then the 18-story and the sort of end of the 18-story building that faces south. Now we're getting into some of the 12th Street. That was the sort of overview. Now I'll take 12th, 7th, and 11th again in more detail. Basically, one of the nice things that the existing campus does do, the Nurses is set back, the tower is set back about 21 feet above the base, and this creates a sort of seat for it, the existing buildings where that comes down on the street wall. We have recaptured that in our new design, which basically creates a sort of setting for nurses, and we've really tried to create a composition out of the whole wall along 12. This is a detail of the new transition building between Nurses and Martin Payne. We've really looked to the sort of modern examples in the historic district, including the new school and Butterfield House for inspiration. Masonry, that's something that really that ties back into the fabric of the district, but done in contemporary detailing and contemporary approach. We're really mixing brick here with a patinaed copper and also a channel glass type of material, which looks like this, which is it's very soft, translucent feeling. So you'll see that, that'll reoccur in places in the project. I should also say that this wing of the building is at the property line that marries with the Martin Payne building. This section is recessed about 12 feet from the property line, creating an entrance recess, which is very similar to many buildings you find in the district. And then this wing is about 4 feet set back from the property line, creating a slight green zone, and also, again, this lining up with what's happening at across on the other side of Nurses. Now, when we get to Nurses itself, again, our plan is to go back to the building to restore it. There's a lot of beautiful detailing on it to bring that back. Needs some repair, needs repointing and such. In terms of modifications to the building, really the major things we're proposing to do is one, enlarging the windows, keeping the window pattern as they are, but enlarging them modestly. And also, you see at the two ends of the building are stair towers where the actual windows are offset from the slab, and we are proposing to remove those stairs and put the slab across so that basically if we were to do that, then those windows would be at the floor line, so we're going to reposition those windows. We've reworked the top a bit, and we've added two small entrances into the base. So that's a proposal. I can go back and forth if you wish, but the idea is slightly opening up, modestly opening up the windows, keeping the pattern the way it is today, really with a tripart in the middle, small windows on either side, four on either side of that, and then taking the stair towers, and in order to align the windows, creating a vertical strip, reintroducing that copper material so it becomes a thread now that works through the canvas. This is the proposal today with, now we're down one more at Smith. Smith has an interesting thing is that there's a lot of through the wall units in the brick, in the fabric of the wall. Our proposal is to not enlarge the width of the windows, but to drop the sills, you'll see in a moment, to encapsulate those through the wall units, and that's the proposal. So we've really opened it up, but kept the basic modulation. Smith also has one of those stair towers at its eastern end, and we're proposing again a copper and a steel window, slight projecting bay over that so that you could get habitable space beyond, not a stair hall. This is today in terms of RASCOB. One thing that's not showing is a large bulkhead here, and that will be updated for the next time we show it to you. And our proposal is to replace that mechanical space with a more residential feeling top, rework the 11th floor so that the windows actually line up and creates a top to this building that it never had, open up the eastern 4 windows that are closer to the avenue where there is retail beyond. So that's in summary that facade. Now this is when you turn the corner. This is the end of RASCOB. It shows this sort of new profile versus the existing. And we get to the Avenue building, which, as I said, has come down in height and in girth substantially. As we have been doing before, we are keeping this portion of the building on the property line and then angling back substantially this flank to the south so that you get a scale transition. The top of the building also wedding cakes back so it locks back into the more traditional architecture of the district. So this is a before and after. This is 7th, this is 12th, this is RASCOB, this is the bulkhead on RASCOB, and that's Hoylman and Link. And here's the proposal that you see, basically the rebuild of this floor, the new addition on top, the edge of the sort of north end of the new Avenue building. This is the view a little bit further west, edge of RASCOB, the bulkhead, Hoylman and Link, and the proposal here showing more vertical proportion of the street wall portion of our new building, a lower flank that really marries with the lower part of 7th Avenue, and the angling back of the building itself, of the flank of the building itself. And then this is the final one. This is the south. This is looking north. Cronin, Spellman, Link, Hoylman, and that's a proposal, basically, a reduction and rework of Spellman. You can see a little bit of nurses in the background looming up there. This flank, a little bit of the red brick that's coming from the flank I'll show you in a moment, and then the sort of narrow edge of the building as it faces south. So here, this gives you some of the detailing that we're proposing, which is more of a, we really retreated away from more vertical proportions that we were showing before, and a more squarish proportion, which I think is more balanced. We've also taken away the projecting balconies and created basically inset loggias, which are more flush, so the masonry of the building comes around. The outdoor spaces are carved into the building, and then really you see a sort of wedding cake of tiering, multiple terraces, again, that you get in many buildings in the district. Some of the detailing at the base, we're distinguishing sort of three components of the bottom of the building to subdivide the expanse. One of them is the existing building, one is the street wall portion, and this is the 4-story base. And then the building gets wider as you get up in the base, middle, and top approach. Now as we turn the corner to 11th Street, there's also discussion about how far around the corner we were bringing the retail at the base of the building. I will show you later in plan, but because of the geometry at that corner, the retail across the street at the triangular point where Greenwich comes into 11th really is about at this point. So everything west of this is really out on the promontory looking down 7th Avenue south. And then once we get really to the east of that, it really calms down, becomes almost exclusively residential, except for the residential entrance here. You can see what we're doing here in terms of bringing in various brick patterns, brick textures. Again, the restatement of more of a square proportion of the window openings. Now this is now sort of a zoom out on 11th Street. Again, we were just looking at this area. This is 7th Avenue. This is a bit of the townhouses coming to the east. The edge of the 7th Avenue building, this wing, which is a 5-story street wall, steps up 2 more stories. This is Spellman. You can see what we're taking off of Spellman. And then these are the townhouses east of the Spellman building. Okay, now we get into Spellman itself. Really, once again, with Spellman, there's a lot of through-the-wall units. We're proposing to get rid of those to tie them back into the fabric, but we also are proposing to enlarge the windows modestly, and I can give you all the percentages and all that good stuff, but we're really talking about taking all these buildings, which I've mentioned, and opening up the percentage of masonry openings in the 4 to 5% category. So one of the things we are doing, again, restoring the building, going back to the building fabric, repointing. There's an entrance in Spellman that is closed today. We're going to open that up. That will be a building entrance itself. And here's the proposal. Again, I'll go before and after. And in order to give the street wall more presence, more of a top, more of a culmination, we've taken out these infill, I guess they're cast stone infill arches, very flush, no detail, sort of mutely detailed, and really carved them up so that you get 5 arches that really culminate the top of the building. And again, here you can see the windows enlarged, but also the elimination of the through-the-wall units. And then finally, with the townhouses, we've gotten rid of the real ups and downs of the townhouses, created a very unified brick appeal with that channel glass at the base and then weaving up into the building. One thing I want to note is in plan, this is a fragment of a plan of 11th Street. Here's Spellman. Again, the re-entrance to Spellman. And then these are the existing townhouses. So Spellman comes out to the property line. We're setting back on either side of it with new fabric, new buildings. And then the idea is to just slightly fold, set in each townhouse so it gets a corner window. And here, this gives you a sense of it, so that this one would be 3 feet in front of that one, would be 3 feet in front of that one. So the whole thing really marries Spellman and this building as just a gentle in and out with the wall. And then finally, some sections through the building. This is 12. This is the existing Smith building. And you can see this is the edge. We're proposing an addition onto the back of Smith and Raskop. Today, the Coleman really comes right up against it. So when we remove Coleman, we are proposing to add on to that building. This is new build, which is going to replace a Link. And then this is a section taken further to the east that shows the existing profile of nurses with a slight increase for the new elevator override, but what we are doing is keeping the width of the slab of nurses. Nurses is 41 feet deep today, meaning from here to here is 41 feet deep. We had thought about putting an addition onto the rear. We were concerned about its impact on not only the court, but just in terms of its street wall from the south. So the idea was just to mimic what's just keep the existing building profile the way it is. We are opening up the south side substantially. Right now it's an extraordinarily utilitarian rear wall of that building, and I'll show you the design in a moment. And this is Spellman, and this shows the sort of extent of the mechanical and a T wing that goes into the back, approximately 100 feet from property line into this really much center of the block. So the idea is to also carve that back, let some relief between these two very tall buildings in the middle of the block so that there's better light and air, not only for the inhabitants, but also for the street wall as well. So this is a cut through the center court. This is the Avenue building. This is the rear of Smith and Raskop. It's mainly Smith in this view. This is the redo of the rear of nurses. The idea is to recall nurses in a more modern approach, really taking the two stair towers and the center focus of that facade and treating it in a much more modern way. And then this is the rear of the building the mid-block building between nurses and Martin Payne. Just a few plans, and then I'll stop and take questions. This is 11th. I talked about the 5 townhouses making the transition in. This is Spellman with its front door. This is residential along the wing of the main building. This is a lobby with a recess that you enter in. This is what I was talking about before. This is the prow of the building at 11th and Greenwich. And if you just sort of draw a line pretty much straight up, you'll see that most of this retail is not even up in front of the side street. It's really in an avenue. This is retail continuity. The amount of retail that we're proposing here is in the 15,000 square foot nature. It's range. It's subdivided. And then on the return along 12th, as I said before, we're really only opening up the first 4 bays in terms of a larger storefront. There are pilasters already there, so we're just widening to the existing pilasters. Across the street is a 1-bay return of the retail, subway entrance, a parking garage, and the lobby of 175. So we are, I think, in terms of the retail wrap around into the side street, we really calmed it down by making these smaller windows, and B, it's not like there is the smaller, more delicate fabric, less commercialized fabric across the street. As we go down 12th Street, there is a lobby entrance the facade of Smith, nurses' residence. There are 2 side doors on nurses, beautiful ornamentation over it. We're, of course, preserving those, and those will become entrances to 2 ground floor units, like little embedded houses, and then we're using the main entrance of nurses as a main entrance to that building. There will also be ground floor entrances to 3 or 4 units along 12th Avenue, so that they're maisonettes, so that you have more eyes on the street, more activity. Then this will become the main entrance to the 12th Avenue building between nurses and Martin Payne. And we're, what's that? 12th Street, I apologize. And then this is the garage entrance, below grade parking entrance off of 12th Street, where it was in the previous plan going below grade.
How many cars?
The cars have not been determined yet. We believe they're going to be in the 150 to 200 space level. We can approximately, as of right, there would be 80 accessory. We're looking for an approximate doubling of that, but again, it's very early on. The environmental has not advanced since the last time we talked about it. But even with 80, we would still propose the entrance to be there and have the parking below grade. This is, let me just show you. This is a little bit higher. You can see maintaining the basic outline, or really the frame of nurses, with some modifications on the rear wall. And then as you go up, you can see the sort of buildings either side of Spellman dropping off, and sort of the higher buildings wrapping around it. And then finally the avenue, detail the avenue building as you get up. And that's the show. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. That is very comprehensive. You've obviously done a lot of work in a short amount of time. We're going to take some questions. By the way, I didn't hear any gasps when you did the before and after, so I always take that as a good sign. But we'll see right now with some questions. Yes, Carol.
I think that they should be congratulated for coming up so quickly with a plan when they distinctly told us last time we were here that you couldn't possibly reuse any of these buildings as residential. The windows were too small.
That's what's known as a backhanded compliment.
Oh, is that what it is?
My question is about Reese. One, is it any higher than the existing building? And related to that, I'm just wondering, given the fact that now, beginning with Martin Payne all the way through the end of Smith Rascott, they're different buildings but one feel. What was the thinking in terms, other than you're thinking get it through landmarks, what is the thinking in actually tearing down Reese as opposed to reusing it? Why do you need to tear it down?
Okay. Really, I don't think any of the commissioners needed again, they didn't opine officially. They gave comments. No, let me finish. Okay. So basically, it wasn't something that was, from their point, deemed contributing. At least that's the way I interpreted it. They didn't opine officially. And I feel that this makes for a better contribution to the streetscape than Reese, because one, it has ins and outs. It has a recess at the main entrance. Two, it's more residential in feel. And if you go back to the overall, I'll just sort of do the streetscape before and after. I mean, that's before Reese's. I undistinguished. If we were to repurpose it, which we looked at, really the windows would be enlarged and would really merge into a sort of washed out version of that. And our feeling was, well, why not make something that's a little bit, much higher in quality and a little bit a relief from the expanse of that wall. It's actually, if there are puts and takes, The main street wall is about the same height because it brackets nurses. There is a multiple setback this way, and we're proposing sort of to reverse it. We are making a slightly taller street wall wing here against Martin Payne, but
how much taller is it at its highest point in the existing building?
I can't tell you that with accuracy right now, but let me see. There is the overlay. So that's the existing, okay, and that's the proposed. Okay. If you, I can, and I will be asked obviously by the commission to provide like dimension section, and I'll be happy to do that. But the nugget of the answer is we think this is a better addition to the streetscape than the building that's there now.
Okay, thank you. Andrew Berman asks, the 7th Avenue Rudin Tower, while lower than before, still appears to be notably taller than the Coleman building or surrounding buildings. Is that right? Question.
So is that what's the question?
In the form of a question.
Is it still taller in this like so
Is it still taller? Yeah.
The Coleman building comes to the street wall here, I believe, just at about approximately 195 feet. Our street wall here is about 12 feet lower. It then has a slight bump at the top. That brings it up to about 205 feet. Our total building to here, our tippy top is, I want to get this right, is 233. So that's 233 versus about 205. Also, it's worth noting that the girth went from, we took the sort of dimension from here to, it was a little bit wider in the previous iteration. That was 202 feet. It's now 142 feet. And if you compare that to Coleman, the flank of Coleman, which is, my estimation, is really what has the bigger impact, this is substantially less. Let me just go through that. Let me show you the elevation. Thank you. That's Coleman. Okay, this is taller, no question about it, but that's the daylight you're getting back. So the slab is substantially narrower and better placed.
Okay. And Jennifer Clark, I think we've answered the question. How will the 4 safe buildings be reused? I think you've answered that. Any questions?
There was a question about use. I mean, it's still residential. I mean, if that was the question. I mean, we're still proposing residential use.
She's nodding yes.
Okay.
Good. Yes, Shirley.
Yeah. The last slide that you had showed the intersection with 11th Street and Greenwich Avenue.
Sure.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah, I think in just a moment.
Yeah. No, it was
Is that what you're talking about, the plan?
No, it was actually the plan.
Oh, okay. Just a moment.
I wanted to ask a question about the sidewalk there and the extension. And so as you're getting to it, my question would be, were you reflecting what you anticipate the sidewalk to be, or was that just a basis to show? Because it's considerably different if you can get to that part.
Yeah.
So what is this now?
This is not what's there now. That this has been improved substantially in terms of.
Why would you call that an improvement?
No. What's there today? Let me be very clear. This plan is not reflective of what's there today. What's there today is an improvement. This was from the land book and needs to be updated.
Oh, okay, that's what.
And I think what's there is an improvement, and it's quite well done.
Protect.
Yes.
And I might add that Shirley had something to do with that improvement. So. Some private authorship, which is what we very much appreciate.
I've talked many times, and I have to say I really think it's important.
Yes. Dan.
Yes,
Dan, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Can you just go over some FAR numbers with us? You talked about, let's call it Plan A, which was your prior submission, and this one, compare FAR and what you're building from Plan A to this plan.
Great. really the FAR, which floor area ratio, the actual zoning amount of square feet that between the two proposals is essentially the same. The differences lie in the fact that we've reduced some of the, or a lot of the bulk of the Avenue building, especially over Raskob, and a lot of that bulk went to the mid-block in the existing buildings. But also, while the existing buildings are tall, especially nurses, they're very narrow, and there's not a lot of square footage in them. And then finally, before, since when we were building new, we were actually recessing a whole level below grade in terms of zoning floor area. That was below grade, but we're counting zoning floor area, and now we've just raised everything up to match the existing ground floor heights. So it's basically the same.
Can you give us that number? I got it.
It's about 618 zoning square feet on east of the Avenue, and that compares to today the existing east of the Avenue is 680.
Okay, Jeanette actually asked the same question. Any further questions from board members or committee members? If not, thanks very much, Dan.
Thank you.
We're now going to hear from Ian Bader on the hospital part of the presentation. And Ian, if you could get through this in 15 minutes.
Probably you doing 5.
Oh, and probably in your sleep too.
Oh, that's true. So our presentation this evening is intended to give you a brief summary of the adjustments that we've been able to make to the hospital design. The adjustments that we've made are significantly more modest than those on the other side of the street, and you will see just an outline of what they are. Essentially, this is the scheme that we proposed, that we presented to the Landmarks Commission, and the essential components of the scheme were again the maintenance of the open space on the triangle, the service building, a podium, a landscape podium, and a street facade on all 3 streets that basically maintains the scale of the building surrounding the triangle with a tower rising above. And so the adjustments that we have are twofold. First of all, in terms of the plan of the building, we have reduced the footprint of the tower by that amount, which is approximately 52 feet in terms of the length of the curve, and about 60-something feet along the diagonal. And that results in a footprint that is more consolidated. The area of the podium is increased, and the tower is much shorter over here. The second adjustment that we've made to the design has to do with the height of the building, and essentially the scheme that we have presented heretofore is 329 feet high. The adjusted version will be some 30 feet lower than that. And we have been able to do that by some reorganization of the program, as well as a much finer analysis, careful analysis of the floor-to-floor heights within the building. And the essential components, however, of the program have been maintained. That is, emergency department on the ground floor, the clinical spaces above 4 levels below grade, and then the inpatient areas in the tower above. And so the height of the building has come down then to 299 feet, as you see indicated here. And the essential adjustment in the program has been the move of the OB postpartum floors from in the tower down into the podium of the building.
terms of the impact of what that means in terms of the elevations, this is a quick summary. I'm sorry, just to look at the plan just for a moment. This is a typical inpatient floor as was previously presented. The element that's been removed and resulting in a floor plate such as that. There has been a subtle increase in the width of the building, 4 feet on this side and 4 feet on that side, in order to enable us to accomplish this adjustment. And similarly on the podium level, the amenities, the support spaces there in the current scheme and the proposed adjustment. And you see here that the prow of the building has been removed from the extremity of the site and brought some 8 feet in from the street wall. In terms of the elevations then, the impact on the scheme is as follows. This is the south elevation on 12th Street, as previously presented, the 330-foot high building. And the adjusted elevation is like that, such that the podium now has an additional level which more accurately continues the cornice line of the adjacent building, such that this is literally a single building mass, and then the tower rising up behind, pulled back from the edge of the site and pulled back from the intersection with the neighbor's property. And that results in the 299-foot high building. Similarly on 7th Avenue, the height of the building has been reduced and the podium increased in height. And then the elevation on 13th Street and the impact of this adjustment on those elevations. This is a view taken through Greenwich, looking diagonally to the northeast. And here you see the previous proposal and our consolidation of the volume of the building results in a lower building and a more deliberate description of the connectivity to the adjacent building and to the scale of the other buildings surrounding the triangle. Then a couple of before and afters in terms of the renderings. This is what we have presented before, with the prow coming to the point of intersection with the neighboring building, and the after version where the street wall is more clearly defined as being part of the volume of the neighboring building and the intersection with the new building pulled back. Looking down 7th Avenue, here you see the increase in the height of the podium, such that now it's an additional story, which again is in the same height category as the other buildings surrounding the triangle. And we have also introduced over here an articulation in the corner of the building to describe a finer edge as the building goes around the corner. Then finally, the view looking up 7th Avenue, as previously presented, and with the modifications that we are suggesting over here. Again, one sees the opening up of the sky essentially on the west side and the reduction in the overall height of the building. And then in terms of the overview, the previous scheme and the proposal that we are advancing this evening. Thank you.
And the other before and after. Just there was one before that. Yes, that one. Okay. All right. Questions from the committee? Yes, we have a few written. Are there changes to HC services as a result of the height change? Healthcare services. As a result of
no, the program is maintained.
Okay. That was Josh Gold. Jesse Campamore says, how hard is it to adapt O'Toole for other healthcare services?
We actually have an elaborate study on the adaptation of O'Toole, and I presume that we will be presenting that in detail to this community at a later occasion. But we have, in fact, a very detailed analysis of that.
Michael O'Regan asks, how many floors lower will the Saint Vincent's building be?
It's a 30 feet lower, which is essentially 2 levels plus.
And I think Carmen asks, well, she says, is it possible to save the hospital and save lives too? Hope so.
Do you know whether the program includes ambulatory care services in this configuration?
The ambulatory care services are being decentralized and moved into other sites within the community.
Any other questions to me? Yes, Doris Steeder.